myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. It feels alright.
Good afternoon. Welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith, Ross Gregory on a Tuesday, and there he is. How are you, Ross? Good to see you.
Steve, thanks. Good to see you too. How's everybody doing?
Yeah, all good, mate. And the World Cup well and truly underway now since the last time we spoke. And England and Wales playing today. Plenty to talk about, as always. Plenty to talk about with regards to Newcastle United as well. We'll leave that to you in the chat to decide which direction we'll go in. I am going to post something, though, in the YouTube chat for everybody to vote on. And what is it, I might hear you ask? Well, it is the Mirror's Fans Footballer of the Year. Now, me and Ross were speaking about this before we came on air, and the Footballer of the Year has been won by Salah for the last couple of years. Now, all you need to do is click on that link that I've stuck in the chat today. I'm going to pin it to the top as well so that those of you who are watching on Catch Up can vote. But get onto the website and vote for Bruno. Bruno is the Newcastle United player that has been basically put in the top 10, I believe it is. See Harry Kane on top 9 there. Harry Kane's on there. Maddison's on there. Of course, he could be at Newcastle by January. Haaland. We've got Salah's on there again. De Bruyne. So yeah, get yourself onto the website. The link is in the chat. Vote Bruno. Let's at least get him in the top 3, if nothing else. But if we can get him to number 1, that would be great as well. I'll try and give that a push on all the shows for the next few days and see where we get Bruno too. But great stuff as always. And it's a rather special day today for Eddie Howe. It's his birthday, Ross. And I guess he'll be allowing himself maybe a little bit of birthday cake. But knowing Eddie Howe, he was probably at work at 7 o'clock this morning, probably working out his schedule for Saudi and looking ahead to what we've got in store, including the friendly in Saudi, the friendly at home, the Bournemouth Cup game, and then he'd be thinking about the Christmas programme. So he'll give himself at least an hour, I would imagine, to have a cup of tea and a slice of cake.
I can imagine. I don't know why. I can just imagine Eddie Howe not being the type who doesn't want to fuss on his birthday, doesn't want to party, doesn't want a big celebration. Maybe have a little bit of time with the family, like you say. Open the presents, have a bit of cake, and then that's it. Day's done. He just wants to crack on and get back to work, doing what he does best. But yeah, many happy returns to Eddie Howe. He's still a young man in management terms as well. So hopefully at Newcastle we continue to see many birthdays with Eddie at the helm as he continues his success with Newcastle.
In his ideal birthday present, 4 games of football to watch: Ecuador, Senegal, Netherlands, Qatar, Iran versus America, and of course Wales versus England. What a perfect birthday for Eddie Howe. He'll be looking forward to that. Maybe he's looking at a couple of players who we might get in the January transfer window as well.
Absolutely. As long as I'm sure he'll be sitting there thinking and hoping and praying that that if the likes of Kieran Trippier or Callum Wilson get a game for England tonight, that they don't spoil his birthday by picking up a knock or a niggle or something like that. So yeah, I can imagine him sitting there with his birthday cake in front of all 4 games today, multi-screening and keeping his eye in on potential players.
FA Cup draw was done yesterday. Sheffield Wednesday away, and we just missed out by a hair's whisker of getting Sunderland in the FA Cup. It's going to happen one day, I think, but it wasn't to be. But Newcastle away to Sheffield Wednesday, I think we would have taken anybody at home. But Sheffield Wednesday away, it's a game, I guess, back in the early 80s and 90s was a huge game. We were quite close back in those days. But Sheffield Wednesday have drifted away. We joined them, of course, in the Championship, under Ashley. But not really a tough game for Newcastle. But they will take it and treat it with the respect that every opponent deserves, I'm sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're right. Ideally you want a home tie. You want a game at home at St James's Park. Against a against opposition which are certainly beatable and winnable. Although Newcastle shouldn't be fearing anybody the form that they're in. Aside from that, though, if you don't get a home draw, I always think if you're going away, can you go somewhere which is going to have a big capacity that can house plenty of Newcastle fans who'll obviously want to travel for the game, somewhere where you can go where it's maybe it's got a little bit of history between the clubs, and somewhere which is winnable. Now I think this one kind of ticks all three boxes on that front. I think it's Hillsborough's a big old ground, big old stadium, which you should be able to get a good away following, a good ticket allocation for that tie. It's a club, like you say, that Newcastle have had a bit of history. I quite like Sheff Wed, if I'm being honest. I quite like both Sheffield teams, but Sheff Wed have got a good tradition, a good history about themselves. So I think it's certainly winnable. Obviously, they're doing well in League One this season, but it is League One. If we, let's be honest about where we're at and where Sheffield Wednesday are at. And if they are having a good season, it's a game that Newcastle should be going in expecting to win. So I think it's quite a tasty tie, quite a mouth-watering tie. Sheff Wed are a big club, marooned in League One at the minute, but I'm sure they'll be back up in the certainly in the Championship and possibly in the Premier League in a few years' time as well, because they are a massive club. So yeah, good draw. I'm quite excited by that one.
Yeah, me too. And again, it's an opportunity, for Newcastle United to progress into another round of the cup. So fingers crossed that happens, and we get a decent run in that cup as well as the League Cup. And the Bournemouth game is on the horizon, of course. And no surprise, I guess, Ross, from our point of view, just to see the sold out signs going up. Again, the League Cup is now on full general sale. We're heading towards a sellout in that game, as we are with the friendly. The Leicester and Arsenal away ticket allocation, both sold out. Leeds at home, which of course is basically the first week in December, sold out again, mate. It's incredible, isn't it? The need for a larger ground is growing, by the week.
Yeah, it is, and there's a lot of demand. Obviously, the demand's far outstripping the supply at the minute. It's boom time for Newcastle in terms of the performances that are being put on the pitch, the feel good factor that's around the club, and trying to get tickets is really difficult for a lot of people at the minute. We've talked about this a lot, and there will come a point where the stadium will have to either be expanded or the club will have to move elsewhere. Certainly, if we continue on this current trajectory in terms of the success on the pitch and the whole vibe and the whole atmosphere and the whole feel good factor around the club. So yeah, it's a real shame for those who can't get into St James's, who want to watch the games. Hopefully that'll be rectified in a few years' time. But at the minute, it's just people trying to beg, steal, and borrow a ticket to try and get what they can, and trying to find their way in any way, shape, or form possible.
Yeah, I mean that's it. It's that's what it goes hand in hand with success. So ultimately, that's just the way it is. And Newcastle making another appointment off the pitch, behind the scenes, and poaching a scout from Manchester City, Ross. Yes, yeah,
another good move from kind of behind the scenes. It's something obviously that I think this one's going to be focused on the kind of the youth structure a little bit more around Newcastle, and bringing Paul Midgley in from Leeds is a good appointment.
From Man City.
Was it
Man City? Yeah, they've taken him from Man City. Yeah, he's the Northern UK youth scout manager.
Yes, he was at Leeds. My apologies. Yeah, he was head of academy recruitment or something at Leeds, and he's worked at them before. So he's a name that I've heard about, and I've spoken to various people about him over the years. His name's cropped up when he's during his time at Leeds and at Sunderland. So a lot of people who I have spoken to know him and speak highly of him as somebody who's who's very good at what he does and will fit in hopefully with the Newcastle kind of dynamic moving forward. In terms of that kind of bolstering that under 23s level, that under 18s level, and bringing more people into the academy and kind of working on that side of things. Less so, I think, with the first team, obviously, but yeah, I think it's another good appointment, and it just shows that the foundation that the club's trying to build. It's not just about putting everything into Eddie Howe's first team. Yes, that's going to be obviously a priority, and that's where the kind of the main eyeballs are, and that's where everybody gets excited. But they need to have this solid base. They need to have the kind of the foundations below the first team need to be improved. They've needed to be improved for a lot of years. The amount of talent that comes through the academy and through the 23s into the first team has been poor in recent years for Newcastle. I don't think that's unfair to say. You know, you have one or two kind of outliers like a Sean Longstaff or a Paul Dummett. You know, Paul Dummett, you're talking 10 years ago. Stephen Taylor, you go back further. The levels of players coming through the academy, homegrown or otherwise, into the first team hasn't been good enough, and putting these kind of building blocks in place, getting the right people in the right jobs is really important for the club.
Yeah, no, it most certainly is. We're hearing a lot from, Dan Ashworth, and we'll come on to the new strategies that he was talking about in another interview in a moment. But Darren Eales, again, coming out in the Chronicles article today, talking about the good ideas that he's willing to listen to from supporters. And of course, they had the fans engagement meeting, which was earlier on in this month, but specifically he's been talking about statues at St James's Park, and he's up for discussing with supporters any future ideas that can help connect the club with the supporters. And he was asked specifically about statues by the Chronicle, and he says not to talk specifics, but hats off to the ownership with what they did when they came in. From my perspective, as we think for the future, it's about fan engagement. And he says anything that excites and galvanizes our fan base, I'm well up for. But talking about the statues, he said it would be crazy not to. So for me, it is about how we can be proactive for things that bring the connection back. He says with the Alan Shearer and Sir Bobby statues, it doesn't matter what time of day it is. And what I love is people taking photographs outside the ground with the statues. And he says that's not just on a match day. It's fans that have come to visit Newcastle. Newcastle fans may not have seen a game in years, but they want to have the picture with Alan's statue or Sir Bobby. So it's about thinking about those and how we can gain more touch points and more connections between supporters. Any good ideas, I'm up for. So certainly going to cause a little bit of debate amongst the fan base, I would imagine, with regards to statues. Who should have one, who shouldn't have one. Anybody you would put forward automatically to have a statue?
I think the one that always jumps out at me, and I don't know whether it would be a statue or maybe just a stand or a bar or something or other. The one that always jumps out at me is Joe Harvey. Now, Joe Harvey's his legacy at the club, it's almost second to none. In terms of what he achieved as a player and as a manager, and I think to have that recognition for Joe Harvey, whether it's in terms of a statue or something else around the ground, and I know there are bits and pieces, but something of that ilk, that would be the one for me. I suppose if you're moving more into kind of more the modern day era, then Kevin Keegan is another one who's very kind of iconic and closely associated with Newcastle. Whether that would be something like that Kevin would want, or it would be the right move, I'm not sure. But those are the two kind of standout names for me in terms of if you're looking at statues. But I'd be interested to hear if anybody else has got any different opinions. Whether there's somebody else who is more fitting and more deserving.
For me, Joe Harvey needs one. I mean, I helped raise 5,000 of the £10,000 that we had to spend on getting the plaque at the Gallagher end of the ground. I mean, none of us wanted a plaque. We wanted a statue. Tom Maley, the sculptor, was ready to make a statue of Joe Harvey. But unfortunately, all we got was the plaque. And as I say, that cost $10,000 to put up there. I would agree, Joe Harvey needs a statue. The other two that stand out for me are Kevin Keegan and Peter Beardsley. Two of the greatest players for different reasons. KK because he was a great player but a great manager, Changed our fortunes not once but twice. Could have done it 3 times if he'd had the backing of Ashley. And of course, Peter Beardsley, still for me in my era, one of the best players to pull on a black and white shirt. Now, I do know that people in the 70s will probably say Super Mac or Tony Green. Tony Green, for me, sadly didn't play enough games. Super Mac, I would agree, as a close friend, somebody who takes part in this show, I think would be worthy of a statue. And then I suppose you're looking at the other goal scorers. You're looking at Hughie Gallagher, who of course, was a record goal scorer at the club until Andy Cole broke the record. But of course, somebody who was part of that wonderful team that won the league back in the 1920s. So I guess McCracken is another one. Somebody whose name is synonymous with success. Back in the day. There are so many, and that's what Arsenal do so well. You go to Arsenal, and there are statues all over. I've mentioned this before on the show, but you go to Everton, and they've got a plinth with 3 people on. There's three different players on one plinth. So it doesn't all have to be individual statues. It can be done in such a way that it doesn't take up as much space. But look, the space all the way around that ground to have statues. And I think as well, some of these people could essentially have a stand named after them, we've got the Milburn stand, we've got the Sir John Hall stand. I guess there are 2 stands, open for naming, and maybe that might be the way to go forward. So it's a debate. Asking you in the chat, tell us who you would like to see a statue of. Have we missed anybody off? Is there anybody who you think you would give a statue to? Drop your suggestions into the comments today. Dan Ashworth, touched on him a little bit earlier as well, and just catching up with the Chronicle as I did this morning. In another interview with the Chronicle, Dan Ashworth says that the model that they're going for is to make sure that we're exceptional in all areas of our recruitment. He went on to say that might not be recruiting into our academy centres and foundation areas when there's a restriction where you have to recruit within an hour of Newcastle. So, of course, our goal is to make sure we don't miss a player within an hour of Newcastle. We have to make sure we get the best talent, but it's competitive, just as it is in Birmingham and London. He also insisted that even ambitious Newcastle don't have a divine right to win a young player's signature, but he felt that some players and parents may need to be sold the dream. He went on to say that not only do we have to make sure that we've got the best recruitment staff, we have the story to tell. Why come to Newcastle? What's the pathway through? Somebody like Elliot Anderson's a lovely success story for a young player that's been here for a long period of time. He's come through the system, he's got his way into the squad, and hopefully will have a really important career with us. Again, that is music to Newcastle United fans' ears, because the story that's attached to that particular article in the Chronicle Online is of Alan Shearer, of course, who was a ball boy at St James's Park in the game where Kevin Keegan flew off in the helicopter in 1984. Yet he was allowed to leave, go to Southampton, and we had to pay at the time a British record transfer fee for his services, when that could have easily been avoided had he been nurtured on Tyneside. So music to Newcastle fans' ears, that, Ross.
Absolutely, 100%. The Shearer stories is an obvious one. Michael Carrick's another one who left the region, didn't feel it was the best place for him to further his football career. And there's others obviously as well. And look, you're never going to get every young player is never just going to sign for you, because there's a lot of competition out there. There's a lot of good teams and a lot of big clubs out there. I think the bit that really intrigued me about that Dan Ashworth piece is talking about the pathway now. Talking about pathways and stuff, it can sound a bit buzzwordy, if you like. It can sound a little bit kind of coaching speak in certain areas, but it's something that is really, really important for parents, for young players who've got potential, who love to play for Newcastle, would love to be signed for Newcastle United, but ultimately, just by signing for them, is that enough? Can you demonstrate that there is that pathway through from 16s to 18s to 23s into the first team, or are they just going to go and look and get into the 23s or 21s as it is now and just end up marooned there, then shipped out and ending up in non-league football or wherever it is? So young kids, they need to see, and the parents need to see, that this is a club which will develop young players, which will treat them right, which will give them the opportunities that their talent deserves, and then nurture them, but also look after them after they've finished with the club. If they don't have that pathway through to the first team, what's the next stage? How do they move on from there? I know we kind of, you know, there's a lot of different models that we'll look at. One is, you know, the really one of the real kind of key ones for me from a youth football perspective is actually it's Man United, because, you know, for all they've got all the millions and billions that they've been able to spend on transfer fees over the years, their track record of bringing young players through their academy into their first team is exceptional. It's absolutely exceptional. There's a mad old stat which I can't recall it completely off the top of my head, but I think, you know, it's about 600 games or something like that. Maybe it's even more where they've always had an academy player in their 16 or in their match day squad, either playing or on the bench. Some absolutely mad stat, you know. And they've developed players from their academy. We all know about the kind of the class of '92, but before that and then after that, you know, now you've got your Marcus Rashfords and so on and so forth, Dean Hendersons, people like that who've come through their academy, albeit not in the first team at the minute, but you Scott McTominay's, all these players that they've brought through their ranks. It for two or three things. One, it saves you money a little bit. But two, it gives people in the region a connection to the club. You know, you get connected to your players, and you recognise a good young player from round the corner from where you are. And three, it then it helps attract the best young players around the world as well, because they can look and say, actually, this is a club which is going to give young players an opportunity. If I'm good enough, I'll be old enough and I'll be able to get in there. Man United have got one called Shola Shortire, who's in their academy, who's very, very highly rated, who's from up this neck of the woods, you know, who played for City Juniors, who played for Hebburn Town Juniors, played for Crammy Juniors, and got poached away by Man United and is now in the Man United academy when he should be in Newcastle's academy coming through. So yeah, music to my ears, music to a lot of fans' ears, I'm sure as well. It would be great if we could see that pathway, that progression through for a lot more young players.
Yeah, I agree, mate. It's just fantastic. It's like a different club altogether. It really is. Come to a couple of comments. John says, afternoon all, tune-wise, I'm a bit conflicted. He says, as much as I think the World Cup's okay, I'm primarily a mag. I thought this season would be stress-free ride with gradual progress, but it's evolved far more than that. Third place. Finishing in the top 4 at this stage of our project will be like winning the league, and I think we've got a great chance of beating Bournemouth and Sheffield Wednesday. He says, I'm more in favour of progressing in the league than the Cups, but it's a very weird having a debate about preference. Any thoughts? I'm just hoping I don't wake up and it's all been a dream. I don't think there's any chance of you doing a Bobby Ewan, John, but from my perspective, progress in both fronts. You know, Newcastle are not going to be short of cash, you know, and under these owners, and progress across the board for me, because we don't have to pick and choose. Is you know, it's the way forward, and I think these owners will want progress across the board. Ross, what's your view?
Yeah, I agree. If I had to choose one, my preference at this point in time would be to win a cup, to get to Wembley, win the League Cup, win the FA Cup, win whatever cup. I don't really matter. I'm slight. You know, I've seen Newcastle finish second, third, fourth in the league and get into Europe, seeing them play in the Champions League, etc., etc. And I'd love to see that again. Don't get me wrong. I would absolutely, you know, it would be fantastic to see those days again. I've never seen Newcastle win a cup, and that's something that I want to be able to take off. I want to see them actually lift something. So it's a ridiculous conversation, I suppose, that we're having in many senses. But if I had to have the choice between, I got asked this the other week. If I had the choice between you'll finish in the top 4 in a Champions League place, or you'll win the League Cup, I would take winning the League Cup every day.
Couple of suggestions with regards to people on statues. Joe Harvey says Les, and then he says maybe 3 or 4 together from different eras, including Supermac. And a suggestion that we have Keegan, Beardsley and Waddle all on one plinth from David Cook, which is a nice idea. And lots of interesting suggestions. So keep them coming in, and we'll get on to the next point. Tom Dixon mentions this, and I haven't seen this, Tom, so you're up to date with the news. Do you think it's right? No, not that one. It's this one. Premier League confirms 23-24 season starts 12th of August 23. Mid-season break 13th to the 20th of January. Really, why they would have a mid-season break of 1 week doesn't seem right. Season ends on Sunday the 19th of May 2024. So slightly later start to the season, obviously with the delay that we have this season. But thanks for that, Tom. He also asks, do you think it's right playing Jordan Henderson tonight? Jude Bellingham has been playing well for England in recent games. I mean, it's a squad rotation. He's got the best players to pick from, and ultimately, from my perspective, I would like to see him probably play a team that's going to go out and try and win the game and win it comfortably. I think Wales have got an aging team, and England should really go for this. But Southgate may have different ideas. The one thing I don't want to do is finish second in this group, because the potential of playing France in the next round, I just think, well, that'll be the end of our World Cup. I think winning the group, we've got a slightly easier passage in the next couple of games. But what's your take, Jordan Henderson? I mean, he came on in that game against the USA to shore things up and to add a bit of experience, I think, Ross. I just think Gareth is a good tournament manager, and has decided all we're gonna do here is play this game out. If we can catch him on the counter and get a goal, great. But I think he realised that this was going to be a difficult egg to crack, and he went for experience, closed the game up, and got the point. So England essentially qualified, but he's got to put a team out tonight to win. And according to Sky Sports News today, Foden is going to start. A lot of people clamouring for Foden to start. Mount, maybe Sterling could make way, one of those two.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the team news when it drops. Look, if we're being honest, the USA game, the performance wasn't what we wanted, wasn't what we hoped for, wasn't what we kind of expected. I suppose a little bit after the Iran game, we thought that maybe the shackles were off, and this new kind of progressive attacking England team was going to spring forward. It was disappointing, and they didn't create anywhere enough and didn't do well enough at all. I think I said last week when I was on, I'm a massive Southgate fan, and that hasn't changed just because of the USA game. I think he's a really good modern day kind of manager. What he's done with the England culture and what he's done with the team as well over the last 6 years has been fantastic. Yes, he's cautious. He's very, very cautious, and he's very pragmatic, I think, with some of his team selections, but also his in-game decisions as well, his substitutions and whatnot. So I expect them to make a couple of changes tonight. I think Foden will start. I think Henderson will start. Maybe Kyle Walker will come in at right back as well instead of Kieran Trippier. I think there will be changes, but will the approach be too much different? Probably not. He's, like you say, Steve, he's a very, very good tournament manager. He's to get through the stages. England have gone deep, very, very deep in the last two tournaments that they've been in. Southgate recognises, rightly or wrongly, but this is how he approaches tournaments: is that clean sheets and being defensively solid will get you deep into tournaments. Not necessarily the teams that go out all guns blazing and score lots of goals and create loads of stuff that go deep into tournaments. That's his view on it. Whether you agree with it or not is open to debate. But I suppose the proof's in the pudding in the last two tournaments, with a semi-final and a final appearance, have kind of justified that approach. I think we would like to see the shackles off a little bit more, because there are a lot of really good, young, talented attacking players in the England squad at the minute. But he's not going to change. He's not going to bow to any pressure. He's his own man. Excuse me. He's his own man. He's not going to wait by by my opinion or by your opinion, by media opinion, by Twitter opinion, by whatever. He's going to continue to do what he thinks is the best way of approaching tournament football, and I expect it to be probably a kind of containing game with then a bit of counter attack and then try to overrun Wales in the last 20-25 minutes again tonight. That's how I see it potentially going.
Yeah, me too. It's going to be an interesting game. I think we've got more than enough to beat Wales. Doesn't matter what team he picks, to be honest. But it's all about the group stages once you get through. And he's a good tournament manager. He got us to a final and he got us to a semi-final, for God's sake. I don't understand all the negativity. Some people just like to complain about the manager, I guess. And the longer Gareth Southgate's in the job, the less we'll have to worry about Eddie Howe being poached. So keep Gareth for England. That's what I say. We'll be back after this ad break. A big thanks to all our sponsors, starting off with Skips and Bins. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. The website is www.skipsandbins.com. Easy, contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks also to Garden of Healing Dispensary, CBD hemp and cannabinoid specialists. Find them at thegohd.com. Thanks also to 3 Properties, and they specialise in sourcing investment properties for their clients who are looking to invest in the Northeast. They offer a full in-house service from sourcing the deals to managing the properties for you. They've done over 100 plus deals in the past 12 months for clients all over the UK. Give them a follow on Instagram, matty.patter_northeast property and phil.reed_northeast property. Or email phil@3property.co.uk if you're interested in getting a good property deal. Big thanks also to Mr. Vicky's sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at mrvickys.co.uk or order some of the sauces by calling 01768 210 102 or emailing info@mrvickys.co.uk. Thanks also to Blowhole Brewery, and their cans are vast and in the shape of the old Newcastle United strips from the 1990s. Bonnie Blonde, Geordie Juice, and Fog of the Tyne. Some great beers. Get yourself to blowholebrewery.co.uk to order your cans in for the festive period. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the video side of things. And thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle. If you want to subscribe to the channel, hit the subscribe button on the bottom right-hand corner. Hit the like button and click share. Please join the channel as well to support us. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. If you want to join the channel, you can use this QR code or just go to nufcmatters.com and look for membership pack. If you join in that particular way, you get a scarf, a cup, a pen, and a membership card and entry into the monthly draw. We also give you a free car sticker. All you need to do is subscribe to the show and then email John at nufcmatters.com to claim it. We also support the food bank on this channel, nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk. Go to that website and make a virtual donation today. A couple of events coming up. Paul Gascoigne is at the Fed on the 4th of December. Contact the Fed in Dunstan and Gateshead for more information. And Peter Beardsley, 20 tickets left for this, is at St. Dom's Catholic Club in Newcastle on the 10th of February next year. Contact St. Dom's via their contact details on their website or on Twitter. If you're looking for a Christmas present for a Newcastle fan, you can go to badboysbooks.net. You could order a copy of Enemy from the Bender Squad to the Gremlins, or the last remaining copies of Black or White, No Grey Areas by Lee Clark and Will Scott. If you're looking for a Christmas jumper for your night out, go to nufcmatters.com and get your Bruno jumper today. Potential transfers is something which is going to be in the air over the next couple of months. Transfer window will be opening after the World Cup, of course, in January. And John Askew asking the question, have any potential signings come to light, Ross, as a result of the World Cup? Tom Dixon suggests that Newcastle are looking to make a move for the PSV star Cody Gakpo in the January transfer window. And the Chronicle tonight reporting that Leandro Trossard has already told Brighton that he would be open to a move away from the club in January if the right opportunity arises. He's, of course, featuring for Belgium at this moment in time in the World Cup. Newcastle, of course, have scouts out there potentially watching the playmaker. Of course, they will have been impressed with him. And Chronicle suggesting that maybe the only club that we may have as a rival for his signature is Chelsea, of course, with his former manager, Graham Potter, at Stamford Bridge. How long for, though? God only knows. But Trossard was also one of Dan Ashworth's first signings on the South Coast with his former club. Trossard's contract expires in the summer of 2023, but he does have an option to extend for an extra year. Thoughts on Trossard first, Ross? We've discussed him before, but it was only a suggestion from me actually on here. I've suggested him. I suggested Maddison in the last transfer window as potential signings, but both of them have come to the forefront as potential, players that might get over the line. Would Trossard fit into this team, do you think?
Oh, absolutely, %. I think he would. I think he's a good, talented player. He's added a lot of end to his game over the last 6 to 8 months as well. His ability in the final third's really good. I think he fits in with the kind of style of player that Newcastle are looking for. He's quick, he's dynamic, he's good on the ball, he's hard working. He's the right kind of age bracket as well, and he's obviously, like you say, he's well known to Dan Ashworth, and Eddie Howe will obviously know all about him as well. So. And with his contract situation, which you've kind of touched upon as well, I think it would be. I think it's one of those that looks a good potential fit for Newcastle, but there will be, Chelsea, yes, but I think there'll be plenty of competition for Trossard's services over the next few months.
What about Gakpo that Tom Dixon mentions? Is that one that you've heard?
Not personally that I've heard. I've heard him. He's obviously, there's a lot of noise around Gakpo at the minute. Man United and Arsenal and a couple of others have been linked with him as well. I think he would go for big money, very, very decent money. But he's having a decent World Cup. He looks a good player, but it's not one that's been that I've necessarily heard strongly linked with Newcastle.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be the silly season as always. Maddison again, linked, and a little bit of banter apparently going on at the World Cup, as you would imagine. Maddison out there, Kieran Trippier, Callum Wilson, Nick Pope. Footballers do talk. Ross, do you think the lads will be out there trying to persuade Maddison that this is the right move for him?
Yeah, no doubt at all. They'll be on him. They'll be niggling away at him, telling him how great it is playing at St James's under Eddie Howe. Again, another player who's kind of fits that profile in terms of his age and the ability. He offers something a little bit different. He's obviously in fantastic form. He'd be a great addition to pretty much every team. In the form that he's in, he'd be pretty much a great addition to every team in the Premier League, I think, not just Newcastle. So whether Leicester are wanting to sell, I don't know if they need the money at the minute after the summer came and went and the financial issues that they had then. But given the form that he's in, I don't see them selling in January. But it might be one to keep an eye on for the summer.
Darren Lee says, sounds like Maddison was asked yesterday on his links with Newcastle, but he laughed it off. Yeah, I mean, again, Chronicle first with the story today. It was a chat with the Lions Den, actually, which is where this interview came from. But he said, to be fair, me, Cal, Trips and Popey have been having a bit of banter. He says it's 3-on-1 with the Newcastle boys. We've been having a bit of banter about the Boxing Day game coming up. And obviously there was a bit of speculation last summer. It's been good fun, banter, as you'd expect with the lads. So nothing more, nothing less. He also did say, though, keeping the Leicester fans sweet, he says, I think the Foxes are going to come out on top on Boxing Day. I've been saying that all week. It's obviously 3-on-1. Newcastle are in good form, to be fair. There's a bit of banter, but I think the Foxes are going to come out on top. Callum Wilson is sure he's going to score, but I think he'll have to have a quiet day. So as you expect, a bit of banter in the changing rooms and the training ground between the lads. But yeah, look, could be interesting. Will he come? Will he stay? Will he end up elsewhere? Is he part of Eddie Howe's thoughts in the transfer window? He's going to keep that very close to his chest. But let's see what happens. We haven't touched on the women's game yet. 28,500 there, Ross, at the weekend. They progressed into the next round of the FA Cup with a 2-1 win against Barnsley. A goal which probably would have suited David Ginola, Tino Aspria, or maybe even Bruno or Miggy from the ladies team. But ultimately, great to see such a big turnout, breaking the record, smashing the record again, and getting so close to 30,000. And I think if it had been a bit warmer, maybe we would have had a bigger crowd. So maybe another game later on in the year might see that 30,000 record created. And Amanda Staveley, as we broke the news on Sunday that she was going to go in and do a team talk, showing her commitment, to the ladies' game, and it's fantastic, isn't it? Real feel-good factor around that now.
It is, and it's what the club needs. It's what the club, Amanda Staveley set a stall out when she first came in, that she wanted to include the women's team, work more closely with them and get them more inclusive into the team, along with a lot of other kind of community projects, if you like. Not that I'm saying the women's football is a community project, but in terms of connecting with the community and connecting with a wider fan base rather than just focusing in on the men's first team. So yeah, great to see. A fantastic crowd, some great goals, and I hope it's just something that continues to build and continues to be pushed, because the women's side of the game is obviously it's growing really quickly, and there's a lot. It's a big growth area there. Newcastle haven't really addressed that over previous regimes and previous years. The women's team's not really been a focus or a priority like it has at other clubs. Some just down the road and some further afield. So it would be great to see that the popularity of the women's game is huge. We saw that on Sunday in more than one way. We saw it at St James's Park on Sunday, but we also saw it on I'm a Celebrity with Jill Scott winning I'm a Celebrity. It's a massive growth area. It's a massive. It's got huge popularity and appeal now to the wider football public. So I hope that they continue to push it. I hope that we get to see more games at St James's Park, because it's the only way that the club will help grow the game and help kind of bring on that next generation of football fans as well.
Tell Ross, good afternoon. He says, can I ask Ross, does he think key players will be back for Leicester game, such as Bruno, Trippier, Wilson, Shaw, etc.? So I guess, are these players going to be able to hit the ground running when they get back from the World Cup?
Well, some of them could be back from the World Cup in a couple of days, couldn't they? if England get knocked out tonight, which they shouldn't do, but yeah, I think a lot of it obviously depends on how deep England go into the World Cup, how far Brazil go, and so on and so forth. But I certainly think that there'll be no issues with kind of match fitness with them. They're training all the way through. It's just then obviously they won't have had a great deal of time if they're with their international teams all the way up to the final. They won't have had a great deal of time to then integrate and acclimatise back into the Eddie Howe squad. But there shouldn't be any issues with their fitness or anything else like that.
John says, Ross, Miggy has had an amazing month. Can he sustain it? And is the apparent transformation simply down to the manager?
I'm always a little bit reluctant with Miggy when it comes to Miggy, because if I put my cards on the table, then I thought that he would have been away by this point. I thought he might have been away in the summer. I didn't see. I'm not wanting to look at it with hindsight and say, "Oh, I saw this coming. I always thought he could produce this type of form." I didn't think he was capable of hitting the heights that he showed over the last month or two. And I'm not going to sit here and lie about it with the benefit of hindsight. So, can he sustain it? I didn't think he could hit these heights anyhow, so I don't know if he can sustain it. If I'm being honest, I'd be surprised if he could sustain it. But let's all hope that he can. I think a lot of it is down to Eddie Howe. A lot of it's down to confidence as well. Once you get on a roll as a player, you can almost feel invincible. You can feel it every time you take a player on, or every shot that you produce is going to end in a goal. So long may it continue. It's a fantastic spell of form that he's in. I'm not sure if it's sustainable over a longer period of time, but let's all hope it is.
Yeah, I would hope so as well. I mean, Miggy's been fantastic. It's got to be said. He's been absolutely fantastic. He's he's been probably up there as one of the best players this season. So let's see how that progresses. Sparky says, "Hiya guys. If Gareth Southgate leaves England after the World Cup, where do you think he will go?" He says, "Personally, I can't see him getting a top job in the Premier League." I mean, where do England managers go? It's a good question. I mean, Sam Allardyce, probably thinking about him. He, a lot of club football, got the England job, missed 100%, of course, played won one, then was out of a job. But I mean, where do they go? Sometimes it's a bit of a graveyard, isn't it, for people? They don't often progress. So Bobby, of course, went on to manage, Newcastle United, which was the club he always wanted to manage. But yeah, I guess it's a bit like after the Lord Mayor's show. You've had the big job. Anything else, I would imagine seems a little bit below you.
It does. It does. I suppose it depends on the individual themselves. So Bobby just wanted a manager who had so much enthusiasm and passion for the game that he was never going to drift away. He obviously went to PSV, Barcelona, Newcastle. He managed at the top level into his 70s. Allardyce, different kettle of fish. Roy Hodgson, maybe similar. Just loved managing and wanted it to work and manage into his 70s. If Southgate leaves after this World Cup, which I don't think he will, I think he'll probably continue the cycle and probably have another 2 years and leave in kind of maybe it's after 2024. I see Southgate potentially is taking a kind of a bit more of an upstairs role, whether that's still within the FA, potentially in kind of an overseeing kind of director of football, but within the FA structure, if you like. He's very good at kind of. He's not just a kind of coach or manager. I think he's good at building a culture. He's good at building an ethos around the club. Working with the younger players and driving all that. I can see him staying within the FA and doing something like that, or maybe he's coming back into club football, but not doing. Maybe he will do a bit of management, but I could see him come back into club football in a similar sort of upstairs role, director of football type of role, something maybe similar to an extent as to what Dan Ashworth's doing at Newcastle right now. That kind of role, I think, would potentially appeal to Gareth Southgate as well. I've said before, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up at Newcastle in some sort of role, not necessarily not managing with the first team or anything like that, but in some sort of wider role at looking after the structures and the youth setup and the whole kind of director of football stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up in that role, in a sort of role like that at a club like Newcastle. So yeah, be interesting to see, but I don't see him leaving England at least for another 2 years.
Joe Harvey should be the first on the list. Hughie Gallagher, Malcolm MacDonald, Willie McFall, George Robledo, Wyn Davies, Mark Lee, given his list of players that should have statues at St James's Park. Roger Cook talking about the England manager job, saying as long as he's not with us forcing Eddie Howe away. Yeah, I mean, we don't want to see Gareth Southgate at Newcastle, do we really? And we don't want to see Eddie Howe leaving. John Askew says, fair comment on Miggy Ross. Les says, Sir Bobby was a cut above, though. I don't know about Southgate. and can see Southgate ending up at Villa or Everton, says John. Darren Lee says, to be fair, Southgate might move abroad into club football, but he's not Premier League quality. Interesting take on Gareth Southgate.
Some jobs suit different people, don't they? Southgate's not had a strong management career in club football, and I don't know if working in a club football environment day in, day out would suit him, or whether international football and that kind of sphere, I think is potentially more suited to Gareth. So and likewise, club managers coming into international football, it's not necessarily for them. We've seen loads of club managers who've been successful, in the leagues, domestic leagues, and in Europe and everything else, that try to step into international football. It's a different pace. It's got different challenges, all that sort of stuff. So it's what fits the individual best. And like I say, I don't see Gareth Southgate managing into his 70s like a Roy Hodgson or a Sir Bobby Robson, but I can certainly see him being involved in some sort of role at various different clubs.
Yeah, Southgate at Newcastle, no thanks, says Gary. Yeah, I can see exactly why you would say that. BT says, Ashworth has hinted that there could be doubt over the availability of players against Leicester City. When do the likes of Wilson, Trippier, Bruno, Pope get a break following their return? Yeah, I mean, it is interesting, to see, how these players will be when they come back. My mindset, and I'm sure their mindset will be the same, is, they'll want to get straight back into club football. But we do know as well, Eddie Howe makes those final decisions, and he will listen to the experts, he will assess fitness and go from there. But yeah, just looking at the World Cup in general, Ross, I mean, we talked incessantly about how stupid it was having a World Cup in the winter. I don't think any of us have changed our opinion about that. We also heard the numerous stories about Qatar and why it should never be held there in the first place, which again I think most of us agreed with. It was ludicrous to even dream of staging it there. However, as always, it happens in these situations. Football is what we all end up talking about, and me personally, I think it's been a really good tournament so far, Ross. There's been some fantastic games, and I mean, yesterday in particular, it was just some fascinating games. We had plenty of goals. We had Cameroon against Serbia, which ended 3-3. Mitrovic scoring in that game. We had Korea Republic against Ghana running out 3-2 winners. We had Brazil against Switzerland, which wasn't a goal fest, but Brazil are just so good. And of course, we saw Bruno get on the pitch at long last, and I think he turned the game. Brazil winning 1-0, and then Ronaldo, Mr. Hissy Fit himself, with his Portugal team. But Bruno Fernandes in fantastic form. Should have had a hat trick yesterday. Maybe should have had 4. But Portugal beating Uruguay by 2-0. There's been some great games. There's been some shocks. Germany not doing what we expected them to do, losing that first game, which was absolutely mental. France and Spain looking strong. I mean, have you been watching it as much as I have? I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, I was off last week. I had a week off, so I didn't take it off to purely to watch the World Cup, but it was a happy kind of byproduct of it. I could spend certain days watching 4 games back to back, which was great. It's been an interesting tournament. I think going into it, nobody knew really how it was going to pan out. Mid-season, in the middle of winter, we're used to games. We used to obviously the tournaments being after the season's finished, where players have been able to sometimes have a little bit of a rest, but also kind of sometimes coming into it a little bit jaded after long seasons. So we weren't quite sure what it was going to be like with this one, and it hasn't necessarily disappointed. There's been a couple of stinker games, there's been a fair few 0-0 draws as well, but there's been some really kind of high quality football being played as well. That Manic Monday yesterday was great to see. Those high scoring games are always fantastic. There's been some of the real stars have started to shine at this World Cup as well. Mbappe looks a cut above at the minute compared to anybody else in the tournament. He just looks like he's playing on a different level. But it's still good to see Messi still being able to deliver, albeit you look at Messi now and you know that he's not the force that he once was. Same with Ronaldo. He just needs to keep trying to claim goals from other people, and he might end up with that Golden Boot award. It's been good to see. I think Spain look decent, but I felt sorry for Gary Neville after when they beat was it Costa Rica 7-0, and I think he'd said before the game that he didn't, he wasn't sure where the goals were going to come from. They didn't look like they had a goal scorer. Then they're going bang 7 in, and he looks a little bit daft. But I kind of got where he was coming from, because I think they play some great football, Spain, but I'm not sure whether they'll be able to kill teams off at times. With some of the forward players that they have. So, but they look strong. France look good. Portugal have played some decent stuff. Brazil, I don't think you can really look past Brazil at the minute in terms of favourites. But we've seen enough shocks now to know that kind of it's difficult to predict any element of the tournament. And I still think, and I'll probably come on this time next week and with a massive slice of egg all over my face, but I still think England can go deep in this tournament as well. I think there's still the quality that can push England quite deep into this tournament. So it's wide open for me. Really is wide open after what I've seen so far.
I would agree. BT says Qatar bid for the Summer World Cup. It was not their decision to play the event during the winter period. Yeah, it would have been a different kettle of fish playing out there in the summer. I think Ross had Qataritis last week, says John. Darren says Maddison looked like he was fit to play some part tonight from yesterday's England sessions, which were streamed live, which would be interesting. Was it his goal, says Roger, regarding Ronaldo? Yeah, he did try to claim it. It wasn't his goal. He said today he was fit to play, Darren, says Les, just about Maddison. From the games I've seen, it's between Spain, France and Brazil to win the World Cup. Darren, I agree 100%, as does Roger. Okay then, England against Wales tonight then, Ross. For me, I see this as a 2-0 win for England. I don't think we'll have as much trouble as people think. I think it'll be edgy first half. I think we'll get a goal either half. But I think England to run out 2-0 winners, win the group, and hopefully have a slightly easier tie in the next round than they may do if they've finished as runners-up. What about you, mate?
Yeah, I agree with you, Steve. I think it's hopefully going to be a relatively straightforward and comfortable night. I'm quite interested to see what, obviously you want to see how well England do, obviously, but I'm quite intrigued by Wales, whether they've got this one last hurrah in them, whether, Bale and Ramsey and Joe Allen and others can kind of rouse themselves, whether they can get some energy into those kind of aging legs, because Bale and Ramsey have been absolutely awful this tournament so far. It's just looked a tournament beyond them. They're too far for them. You look at Bale and he was linked with Newcastle about what was it, probably last transfer window, was it, in the summer, and you look at him now and he looks whether it's injuries have taken a toll, whether it's whatever it is, he looks a kind of pale shadow of himself. But you still know that if a free kick drops on the edge of the box, or if a ball drops into the box or header, he's capable of pulling out these bits of magic on the big occasions, in the big games. So I'm really interested to see how Wales approach this, whether they absolutely just go for it, all hell for leather for 60, 65 minutes and give England a real torrid time, whether they try to sit in and hit on the break, whether they've got it in them to kind of rouse themselves one last time. But either way, I do think England should come out on top quite comfortably by the end. There might be a few scary moments along the way, but yeah, 2-0, 3-0 maybe in the end.
Darren Lee says, I've gone for England to lose tonight, finish second and play Holland on Saturday. Roger Cook says 2-1 England win. Les says, on paper, England should walk it, but Wales have pride and passion playing for their country, and that's not obvious with us. And John says, if we can't beat that Wales team, we deserve to come straight home. And Keith finishes up on the statue. He says, Amanda Staveley statue. Good stuff. Wales need to win by 4 goals to knock England out tonight. You're quite true there, Darren. Tom fancies a 1-0 win. Okay, Ross, just give us a quick plug to where people can find your work. And don't forget, people, click the link, vote for Bruno in the Footballer of the Year awards through Reach PLC.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter and the bits and pieces that Steve's talked about there with the mirror link. There's like Bruno's obviously in there, but there's also a Newcastle vote as well, where there's 4 Newcastle players you can vote for. I think it's Trippier, Bruno, Miggy, and I can't remember who the 4th one is now. Might be Joe Willock, who have been nominated for a Newcastle only player of 2022. Maybe it's one that we can chat about next week as well, just to see what people think. But there's that option. But yeah, in the main vote, if we get, Bruno can get a little bit of love and a little bit of support, and see if he can knock Mr. Salah off his hat-trick bid this year.
Fantastic, Ross. As always, thanks for giving us your time. Look forward to speaking to you next week, mate. Take care.
Thanks all. Bye.